Hi, my name is Tiffany Mensah, and I am an author and a childhood domestic violence advocate. Did you know that 275 children worldwide are growing up in homes with domestic violence? 3 million to be exact in the U.S. 40 plus million adults grew up in a domestic violence home. I'm one of the 40. I'm part of that statistic. And I've written a book called Forgotten, which is available for pre-order, that talks about that journey. A lot of times you hear the statistics and you hear the stories from the survival of the parents, but a lot of times you don't hear what the child went through and the impact of what that was. Doesn't take away from the survivor story at all, because they were simply surviving, right? But what did that impact have on the child? Well, for my aspect, I am going to talk about what that is. And I talk about overcoming that in my book. I talk about the feelings of witnessing the abuse. I talk about the feelings of in the journey of being on the run with my mom as she was fleeing for her life, and what that looked like, and what that looked like was staying with caregivers, and the feelings and the different personas that I ended up taking on. And ultimately, because I didn't know how to name that pain, I didn't know how to identify that trauma, it turned into me self-medicating. And it turned into me self-medicating in ways that was not for the good. It manifested itself in relationships, in work, and attitudes, and anger, and even depression. And a lot of that, because I didn't feel the safety net at home, it turned into me looking for protection and looking for validation and for love, feeling like this would be my story, all because no one talked to me about it, and all because I didn't know what that looked like. And so that bled into from childhood to teenage years to even into adulthood. And in adulthood, it started manifesting itself at church, at work, with friendships. I began, as hard as I wanted to portray myself, I wanted to be accepted and loved. And as soon as I didn't get that, or those triggers of what I grew up living up under seemed like it reminded me of home, then I would just lash out in a completely different way. And people didn't know how to connect with me and relate to me about my journey and my story. So it just added to me being more angry and bitter and depressed, and turning on a whole lot of ego, because I was refusing to become what I saw displayed in my home. And quite frankly, because I was saying I was refusing to be that person, I ended up in some ways becoming that person, because I did not know that domestic violence was not just limited to physical. There were other components to it. And so as I'm going throughout life and going through my early adulthood, getting in failed relationship, toxic relationship after relationship, I became confronted with the crossroad of me, of Tiffany, are you going to continue to do these things that are harming to yourself, that are harming to people, you're basically about to lose an amazing career, all because of your attitude? And it was at that moment that I had to make a huge decision to say, I'm going to get some help. The problem is me. And so in my book, I talk about all these things, and I also talk about the road to healing. I talk about my counseling journey, in depth counseling journey, my feelings, what I learned, all the principles of trying to start that process and going through that process, and what that process looked like. And it wasn't a pretty process. And a lot of times we feel that we go to counseling and we want the instant results, but it's not as instant. And it takes a couple of more bumping your heads to still get it right. But long as you're persistent to healing, and you are consistent in being intentional to heal and continuing to walk down that road, it is available and it is possible. So I also not only give you my story, but I give a story of hope. I give a story of overcoming what the statistics say happens to children who grow up in these homes, because it's needed. The stats continue to come out, and to my surprise, a lot more of professional athletes, a lot more professional singers, even actors, Terry Crews, Christina Aguilera, even those in Congress, Ayanna Priestley, are starting to speak out of, hey, this epidemic impacts the kids in ways that you can't identify. At the top of this year, Psychology Today released an article that kids witnessing domestic violence has impact of a soldier returning home from war, PTSD. So it's important, and it needs to be talked about. And I share my story, a raw, transparent story, because I hope that it will give someone else the courage to take those steps to healing. To someone else, where if you've been trying to continually heal, continually grow, continuing to improve, and you just keep getting hit with roadblock after roadblock, that it's not just you. You may be able to identify some things that may have happened in your childhood that are yielding results in your adulthood that you need to heal from. And so that is my hope. That is the sole purpose of this book. And it is the sole purpose of also letting the parents know that we don't not love you because we go through these things. We love you regardless. I still love my parents regardless. And writing this book allowed me to have a conversation with my mom, where my mom was like, I didn't even remember a lot of this stuff, and let alone I didn't know you remembered as much. And we were able to talk about those things that I did remember. And it was also to let her know, I understand. At that time I didn't understand, but at this age I do understand, and I don't hold you accountable. But this book will hopefully be an awareness to even the parents that, hey, even though you are going through it, talk to your child about it, help them process, help love on them even more so that they don't feel forgotten. And maybe you didn't go through domestic violence. Maybe you went through something else that was severely traumatic, and you felt like you were forgotten, and you felt like you were overlooked. Healing is possible to you, and you're not forgotten. And there is nothing that you have experienced that can take your voice away, that can take your story away, that can take your healing away, because healing is possible. It's going to hurt as you go through the healing process, but I'm here to share my story and let you know that you can overcome. You are an overcomer, and you are definitely not forgotten. That I see you, I hear you, and I would like your story and more stories to become available and to be outspoken about this, so that more kids can get the tools and the resources that they need growing up, that adults who may be experiencing a lot of dysfunction can also heal. So that's all I have to say. Thank you. You can follow me, follow my page, any of my pages here on YouTube or Facebook, Tiffany M Author. The same as on Instagram, Tiffany M Author. And I would love to connect with you, and I would love to hear your story. Talk to you soon.